The morning mist draped over Westlake University like a secret shroud, clinging to the ancient stone buildings that had witnessed generations of scholars pass through their hallowed halls. Professor Elena Reeves adjusted her glasses as she crossed the central quadrangle, her leather messenger bag heavy with research papers, and the weight of 15 years dedicated to the Department of International Security Studies. At 42, she'd earned her position through relentless competence and an almost supernatural ability to maintain composure under pressure. Today's lecture was particularly significant, presenting findings on emerging asymmetric warfare tactics to the senior class without drawing attention to what was really happening on campus. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Elena had submitted her security authorization forms at 0400 hours, embedding them deep within the university's administrative system, where only those who knew how to look would find them. The classroom observation required absolute discretion. Too many previous assessments had been compromised by administrative oversight and donors seeking photo opportunities with the brilliant Professor Reeves. As she approached Manning Hall, she slowed her pace, allowing her trained eyes to scan the perimeter with practiced nonchalance. Nothing appeared out of place, which was precisely as it should be. The weathered oak door opened with a familiar creak as Elena entered the lecture hall. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, arranging her notes on the podium, connecting her laptop to the projector, checking the small encrypted device in her pocket one final time. The system had transmitted flawlessly, its silent confirmation indicating successful data collection. She stood at the window, breathing in the scent of old books and polished wood, watching as students began to filter into the courtyard below. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The campus remained quiet, undisturbed, exactly as she'd intended. But as she turned back toward her podium, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed across the marble floor. Two campus security officers emerged from the side entrance, their postures rigid with purpose. Something in their stride told her this wasn't a routine check. Officer James Mercer spotted the professor the moment he stepped inside, his coffee still steaming in the crisp autumn air. Beside him, Officer Daniel Wilson finished adjusting his uniform jacket, already reaching for his radio. "Somebody doesn't belong," Wilson muttered, eyeing the slim woman with obvious suspicion. "No department meeting scheduled. No regular class at this hour. No proper faculty ID visible either," Mercer added, his eyes narrowing. They approached with the casual confidence of men who'd performed this routine 100 times before. Neither bothered to check the faculty schedule or verify room assignments. In their minds, Manning Hall was restricted for department meetings at this hour, and this woman, whoever she was, had no business being there alone. The first warning sign should have been her composure. Most unauthorized individuals stammered, made excuses, or tried to leave quickly. This woman simply turned to face them, her expression calm and unbothered, as if she'd been expecting this exact moment all along. "Ma'am, this is a restricted lecture hall at this hour," Mercer announced, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. "You can't access this room without proper scheduling. Identification, please." Elena studied both officers for a moment, taking in their body language, their positioning, the way Wilson's hand already rested near his belt. She'd briefed special operators in conflict zones who showed more restraint than these two displayed in their own university. "My authorization is embedded in the administration system," she replied quietly, each word deliberate and measured. "Filed at 0400 hours this morning." Wilson snorted, sharing a knowing look with his partner. "System log, lady. This isn't some community college computer lab. Manning Hall is reserved for department heads only this morning. You're trespassing." Mercer stepped closer, his tone hardening. "What's your name? And don't make me ask again." Without sudden movements or visible tension, Elena reached for the leather messenger bag resting on the podium. The moment her hand moved, Mercer's fingers twitched near his radio. "Hands, where I can see them," he barked. She froze, then slowly lifted the bag by its strap and opened it. Inside was her official faculty ID and security clearance, crisp in their university-issued holder. She extended them toward Mercer with the same calm precision she'd used to hand a cup of coffee to a colleague. Mercer barely glanced at the identification before tossing it onto the desk with theatrical disgust. "This is fake," he declared. "You're claiming to be some professor of what? International security? In this restricted hall?" The ID lay face up on the polished wood, morning light catching the holographic university seal. Anyone who bothered to look closely would see the security features, the proper formatting, the photo that matched the woman standing before them. But Mercer and Wilson weren't looking. They'd already decided what they wanted to see. "Step away from the podium. Hands behind your back," Mercer ordered. When Elena didn't immediately comply, he shouted, "Now!" The sound startled a group of birds from the nearby windowsill, their wings fluttering against the glass. Elena complied without protest. She stepped back, turned, and placed her wrists behind her, her expression unchanged. She didn't speak, didn't argue, didn't threaten consequences. She simply stood still and waited. The plastic zip ties snapped tight. Too tight. Wilson stepped onto the small platform like a man claiming a conquered territory, ready to catalog his spoils. "Let's see what our professor here has been hiding," he muttered, beginning his systematic destruction of everything she'd worked to protect. In that moment, as Elena stood with her wrists bound behind her back, the real test began. Not of her research methods, but of something far more fundamental: how power behaves when it believes no one is watching. The humiliation had just started when people began to gather. Several students had paused at the open door, curious about the commotion. A teaching assistant stood frozen in the doorway, coffee cup halfway to her lips. Someone from the history department lingered in the hallway, not interfering, but not walking away either. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Wilson worked methodically through Elena's messenger bag, pulling out research papers, her laptop, and a small electronic device, tossing each item onto the desk with theatrical disgust. The careful organization Elena had maintained was destroyed in minutes, her equipment scattered like debris after a storm. "You're awfully quiet," Mercer observed, circling her like a predator, his hand pressed against her shoulder. "What happened to all that professorial authority? No threats? No department chair coming to save you?" Elena's breathing remained steady, in and out, controlled. The zip ties were cutting into her skin now, but she didn't shift position. Her shoulders ached from the unnatural angle, but her posture never slumped. She stared at the reflection of the campus quad in the window, waiting. Then, Wilson found the encrypted device. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, yanking it from her bag. Cable snapped as he examined the still-active screen. The system blinked once, displaying weeks of carefully collected data before his palm came down hard. The screen shattered with a low pop, months of intelligence work. Irreplaceable field data destroyed in an instant. Elena didn't flinch. "That your spy gear?" Mercer whistled, impressed by his partner's thoroughness. "Cute. You think you're running some classified research in our lecture hall?" Still, she said nothing. The phones in the growing crowd caught everything. The casual brutality, the systematic destruction, her absolute stillness in the face of it all. Wilson rifled through a side pocket next, finding a sealed flash drive containing backup data. Without hesitation, he tossed it across the room where it skidded under a bookcase. "Oops," he said with a grin. Mercer reached for her messenger bag, the one that had contained her identification. He slung it once by the strap, testing its weight, then flung it toward the trash can where it crashed against the metal rim before falling to the floor, contents spilling across the polished hardwood. "You know," Mercer said, stepping close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath, "we've had all kinds come through here. Students with fake IDs, maintenance workers in the wrong building. But we've never had one walk in like she owns the place. You must be a special kind of crazy." The wind from an open window lifted the corner of her jacket and dropped it again. Around them, the crowd watched in stunned silence. Nobody stepped forward. Nobody said stop. The footage captured everything. But what the cameras couldn't record was the quality of Elena's silence. This wasn't the quiet of defeat or fear. This was the stillness of someone who knew exactly what was happening and exactly why she was allowing it to continue. Because soon, very soon, they would understand what they had done. "We're calling campus administration," Wilson announced, pulling out his radio. "Run a full background check. Maybe get her off campus before she breaks another rule." Mercer nodded approvingly. "She'll sit here till they come. Let her think about who she really is." As they waited, more spectators gathered. A student had started filming with her phone, streaming to a campus social media group where viewers were asking questions in real time about what they were witnessing. A maintenance worker had paused his rounds to watch. Even some faculty members had stepped out from their offices, drawn by the unusual scene. But none of them intervened. The officers, uniforms, their confident demeanor, the official nature of the detainment, it all looked legitimate from a distance. Just another routine security action in a restricted building. Elena remained exactly as they'd positioned her, standing with her wrists bound behind her back. To the casual observer, she might have looked defeated, but there was something in her posture, a readiness, a coiled energy, that suggested she was simply waiting for the right moment. The radio crackled to life. "Unit 4, backup requested at Manning Hall. Possible security breach. Female subject. Non-compliance with detention protocols." "Copy that," came the response. "Special response team en route. ETA, 3 minutes." Mercer and Wilson exchanged satisfied looks. This was how it always ended. Overwhelming force, absolute compliance, their authority unquestioned. They'd played this scene dozens of times before with various trespassers and troublemakers. The script never changed, but as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder in the hallway, something shifted in the air. The quality of the morning light seemed different somehow, sharper. The crowd had grown larger, more attentive. Phones were recording from multiple angles now. The double doors burst open as the university's special response team entered Manning Hall. No sirens but combat boots, striking the marble floor with military precision. 4 individuals in tactical gear moved with synchronized efficiency, weapons holstered but clearly visible. The call had come in as a possible security breach. Unknown female subject resisting detainment. Protocol demanded escalation. Within seconds, the response unit secured the perimeter of the lecture hall. Orders were barked. Students were moved back. A security line established with practiced speed. "Hands where we can see them," the lead officer commanded. "Step away from the subject." "Sir, she's already restrained," Mercer explained quickly. "We secured her when she wouldn't cooperate." The team leader didn't lower his stance. His eyes swept the scene, the bound woman, the scattered equipment, the crowd of recording phones. This was the moment when everything would change, when assumptions would crumble and reality would assert itself with devastating clarity. "What's your name?" the lead response officer demanded, his voice cutting through the tense air like a warning shot. Elena's answer was quiet, almost too quiet for the chaos unfolding around her. But in that silence, every word carried the weight of absolute authority. "I am Elena Reeves," she said, her voice even and untouched by anger. "Professor of International Security Studies and Special Advisor to Joint Special Operations Command." There was a pause long enough for the wind to whisper through the open windows, for one of the younger response team members to squint and look down at the discarded ID card lying half-buried beneath scattered papers. The officer picked it up. His face went pale as he read. He looked to his commanding officer, no words passing between them, just a single, silent nod that changed everything. The air itself seemed to shift. Weapons were secured, eyes widened. The lead officer stiffened, blinked hard, and then, with visible tension in his shoulders, lifted his right hand and delivered a formal salute. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A student lowered her phone slightly, realizing what she had just filmed. Someone whispered, "Did she say special operations?" Another voice added, "Holy shit, she's military." A response team member moved to Elena's side, cutting the zip ties with a careful swipe of his blade. She didn't flinch as her arms dropped to her sides. The red marks on her wrist told their own story, but she said nothing about them. Instead, she rose slowly, brushing debris from her jacket. Her eyes didn't look at the crowd, didn't even land on the officers around her. She stared out toward the campus grounds, silent and composed. The man who had saluted her cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I—" But the words faltered. She raised a hand, not to silence him, but to wave off any explanation. There was no confrontation in the gesture, no demand for apology, just acknowledgement that mistakes had been made and would now be corrected. The security officers who had detained her stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. Mercer's mouth opened, but found nothing to say. Wilson took a step back as if the shift in air pressure had knocked something loose inside him. Elena stepped toward the podium of her lecture hall, glanced once at the shattered device, and then turned back to face the response team. "Secure the perimeter," she said, not loudly, but clearly. "Get the data recovered before it's corrupted." And just like that, they moved without hesitation, without question. The same authority that had been dismissed minutes earlier now commanded instant obedience. The crowd that had once been recording her humiliation now parted in stunned silence. Elena didn't ask for recognition or offer speeches. She simply stood in full view, her presence now undeniable. There had been no escalation, no force, only a name. And that name had changed everything. The first video hit social media by nightfall. 42 seconds of unbroken footage showing a woman standing bound in a lecture hall, dignified and silent, while 2 security officers scattered her belongings and destroyed her equipment. No context, no commentary, just her restraint against their casual brutality. The video went viral within hours, spreading across campus forums before reaching national platforms. Comments poured in, most expressing outrage at what appeared to be clear abuse of power. But the story was incomplete, leaving viewers with more questions than answers. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Then 12 hours later, a second video followed. This one had sound. It showed the same woman standing with unreadable composure as a tactical response team snapped to attention and saluted. A voice could be heard confirming her name and title. Professor Elena Reeves, International Security Studies, Special Advisor to Joint Special Operations Command. The response was immediate and explosive. News outlets replayed the moment on loop, breaking it down frame by frame. Commentators asked why no bystanders had intervened. Social media analysts tracked the video's spread across platforms as #Professor Reeves began trending globally. Within 24 hours, every major news network had picked up the story. Military blogs speculated about her actual role. Student forums filled with first-hand accounts from those who had taken her classes, describing a brilliant but intensely private instructor who never spoke about her work beyond academia. Security experts debated what classified project might have brought special operations attention to a university campus. But behind the viral noise, something quieter and more significant had begun. Admiral James Harrington, Director of Special Operations Strategic Development, stood before a row of microphones in a perfectly pressed uniform and called for a formal inquiry. "We cannot afford to ignore what this reveals about our institutions," he said, holding up a photo of Elena taken during a defense symposium 2 years earlier. "We failed her. We must not fail again." The Office of Intelligence Oversight received the directive before noon. By 2 p.m., Commander Sofia Vega was assigned to the investigation. Known for her precision and absolute intolerance for operational compromise, she arrived at headquarters with a sealed briefcase and a blank report file titled, "Classified Review, Westlake Incident." But the real story was just beginning. As Vega started pulling records and requesting interviews, a pattern began to emerge, one that suggested Elena's treatment wasn't an isolated incident, but part of something much larger and more systematic. The investigation would reveal not just individual misconduct, but institutional vulnerabilities that had been exploited for years. And at the center of it all sat a woman who had remained silent through her own humiliation, knowing that sometimes the most powerful response is to let others reveal themselves completely. Commander Vega worked alone for the first 48 hours, requesting unredacted security logs, campus access records, communication traces, and incident reports from the past 2 years at Westlake University. She received everything she asked for, and more. Buried within digital archives were dozens of complaints filed by female faculty members and international students, each pointing to procedural violations, excessive force, and dismissal of proper identification. Every single complaint had been closed under the same set of signatures: reviewed, deemed non-escalatory, risk minimal. One name appeared repeatedly in the chain of command: Director of Campus Security, Richard Denton. At first, The emails seemed routine, brief, coded, bureaucratic phrases designed to avoid scrutiny. Recommend closure. Insufficient evidence. No further review needed. But the pattern was unmistakable. Any complaint involving international students or certain faculty members, especially where credentials had been presented and dismissed, was filtered directly to Denton's desk. From there, they vanished. Vega didn't speak to the media or issue early findings, but quietly she began reaching out to faculty who had left their positions without explanation. Some replied within hours, others took longer, a few had moved to different countries. All had similar stories. They'd witnessed misconduct, reported it, and been isolated or pushed out. Now they wanted to come forward. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The leaks began 3 days after Vega opened her investigation. Internal memos, redacted incident reports, chain of command summaries with entire blocks of text blacked out, screenshots of denied security appeals. The tone of public conversation shifted. This was no longer about one professor in a lecture hall. This was about a system that had targeted dozens like her and counted on no one noticing. When confronted with the evidence, Director Denton's carefully constructed defenses began to crumble. The smoking gun came in the form of an email dated 7 months prior, addressed to a deputy security officer. If they have accents, check twice. If they resist, detain. If they don't, find another reason. Either way, make them uncomfortable enough to leave. The press conference that followed was brief. Officials confirmed significant procedural failures and potential systemic discrimination within select university security branches. No names were given, but the message was clear. Investigations were underway. Personnel changes imminent. Admiral Harrington gave a second statement. What happened at Westlake is not just about one officer's misconduct. It's about what we allowed to harden into habit. We owe Professor Reeves more than an apology. We owe her change. Elena made no public comment. She had been contacted, informed, invited to speak. She declined every request. The only public photo of her since the incident showed her walking alone along a tree-lined path on campus, autumn leaves in her hair, eyes forward. But the system was no longer still, and neither was she. The call came during the height of the media storm. Campus security monitoring systems had detected an unauthorized infiltration attempt targeting the university's quantum computing research center. Within minutes, the campus fell into heightened alert as containment protocols activated across the network. The security officers who had detained Elena were suspended, pending investigation, standing uselessly in the administration building, while their colleagues scrambled to respond to a real threat. But as chaos erupted around the emergency response, Elena moved with quiet purpose toward the Cybersecurity Operations Center. Inside, confusion ruled. Analysts hunched over flickering screens. Technicians argued over access permissions. System administrators frantically traced intrusion pathways through the network architecture. Someone shouted about isolating the quantum lab's dedicated servers. Elena said nothing as she stepped inside, selected an empty workstation, and logged in with credentials that bypassed every security protocol. No one stopped her. No one questioned her presence. She worked at the terminal as if she belonged there, fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The lead security analyst was mid-briefing with the university president when she reached forward and muted the call. "It's a distraction," she said quietly. "Look at the pattern. They're creating noise in the quantum lab systems while extracting data from the Defense Research Archive. Classic misdirection." The analyst blinked, momentarily frozen. "Who authorized your access?" "Run a full-spectrum trace on the research database connections," she continued calmly. "You'll find dormant connections established weeks ago. Look for subtle bandwidth fluctuations, not intrusion alerts." Keys clicked. Screens shifted. Command lines scrolled past as the system executed her instructions. A map of network connections flashed across the monitor, revealing exactly what she had described. An elegant, nearly invisible data extraction operation, using the quantum lab breach as cover. "Isolate server banks 4 through 7, she instructed. "Activate the honeypot protocol. Let them think they're still receiving data." Her tone didn't waver. The team responded instantly, following her commands without hesitation. Within minutes, the attackers were feeding on false information while their true access points were systematically identified and shut down. "There," Elena said, pointing to a blinking indicator on the screen. "Origin trace. Eastern Europe, but that's just the relay. The actual command center is closer. Much closer." The room went still. The technician near the door froze halfway through a system reboot. Two senior analysts stopped talking mid-sentence. On the screen, a triangulation algorithm narrowed the search radius with each passing second. The source was on campus. "West Dormitory, room 712, she said. "Move in now." Security teams converged on the location. No alarms, no confrontation. The suspect, a graduate exchange student with no prior record, was found with 3 laptops running coordinated attack sequences. The operation was contained and neutralized in less than 30 minutes. Inside the operations center, no one spoke. Elena logged out of the system, closed her session with a few precise keystrokes, then stood and adjusted her jacket. The same security team that had once detained her now watched in silent awe as she prepared to leave. She stepped outside into calmer air. Word spread fast. Staff from nearby offices turned to watch her walk away. One security analyst nodded respectfully as she passed. Another whispered to a colleague. From the administration building, Mercer and Wilson watched in silence. No jeering now, no smirking, just the dawning recognition of what they had tried to break, and failed to even bend. Elena kept walking, passing the lecture hall where her device had been shattered and her research scattered. She didn't look for it, she didn't need to. In the span of a day, she had gone from detainee to commander. But she hadn't changed, she had simply revealed what had always been there. She had done exactly what she came to do: test systems, evaluate performance, measure response under pressure. This time, it hadn't been software being tested. It had been people, and they had failed until she took control. That evening, as the campus finally quieted, Elena sat alone in her office. The spaces between emergency and aftermath always felt strangely hollow, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Her phone buzzed with a message from Admiral Harrington. Phase 1 complete. Extraction team standing by. She typed a single word in response: negative. There was still work to be done. The security breach had been contained, but the infiltration went deeper than a single student in a dormitory room. The patterns she'd observed suggested a sophisticated network that had embedded itself within the university's international programs. Someone was using academic exchange as cover for intelligence gathering, and they'd nearly succeeded because campus security had been too busy harassing legitimate faculty to notice the real threats. Her desk phone rang at precisely 2100 hours. She answered on the first ring. "The student is talking," Admiral Harrington said without preamble. "Names, contacts, the entire network. You were right about everything." "Not everything," Elena replied. "I didn't anticipate being zip-tied in my own lecture hall." A pause then. "That wasn't part of the operation. That was real." "I know." She traced the still visible marks on her wrists. "That's why it worked. The best cover is the truth." Another pause. "The extraction team is still on standby. Mission parameters achieved. Time to come home." Elena looked out her window at the campus spread below, lights twinkling against the gathering darkness. Students crossed the quadrangle in laughing groups. A campus security vehicle rolled slowly along the perimeter road, more cautious now, more conscious of being watched. "Not yet," she said finally. "Phase 2 still incomplete." "Elena," the Admiral's voice softened slightly, "you've exposed the security failures. You've neutralized the breach. What more do you need?" She thought of the dozens of international students who had been harassed, the faculty members who had left rather than endure, continued discrimination, the culture of intimidation that had allowed real threats to flourish undetected. "The system is still broken," she said simply. "I need to finish what I started." The silence stretched between them, waited with unspoken understanding. Finally, he sighed. "2 more days, then we pull you out, with or without your cooperation." "Understood." The line went dead. Elena placed the phone back in its cradle and returned to the window. Beyond the campus perimeter, the city sprawled in all directions, a constellation of lights against the night sky. Somewhere out there, more pieces of the network were operating, more threads to be pulled. The student had been just one node in a complex operation. A soft knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to find Dr. Sarah Chen, a fellow professor from the computer science department, standing in the doorway. The woman's expression was a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "I saw the videos," Sarah said quietly. "Everyone has. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry none of us intervened." Elena studied her colleague for a moment. "Would you have? If you'd been there?" Sarah hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "I don't know. I'd like to think so, but they have badges, authority. We're conditioned to comply." "Yes," Elena nodded. "That's what they count on. That's how infiltration works. Not with guns or explosives, but with the quiet erosion of the ability to question authority." Sarah took a step into the office. "The rumors about who you really are they true?" Elena smiled slightly. "Which ones? That I'm CIA? Special Forces? A deep cover operative sent to expose corruption? Any of them. All of them. Does it matter?" Elena asked. "Yesterday I was a professor being zip-tied in a lecture hall. Today I'm stopping cyber attacks. Tomorrow, who knows? The point isn't who I am. It's who we all choose to be when systems fail." Sarah nodded slowly. "Well, whatever you're really doing here, thank you." She turned to leave, then paused. "The students are organizing. Did you know that? They're calling for a complete overhaul of campus security protocols. They're demanding accountability." Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Good. Change rarely comes from the top. After Sarah left, Elena turned back to her computer. Phase 2 would require precision timing and absolute discretion. The network had been wounded but not destroyed. Its leaders would be scrambling now, attempting to salvage operations, extract assets, erase evidence. They would make mistakes, and she would be watching. She opened a secure messaging channel and typed a brief instruction to her handler. "Surveillance package on all international program administrators. Priority target, Dean Michael Whitmore." The response came seconds later. "Confirmed. Assets deployed." Elena leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of the day settle into her bones. The confrontation in the lecture hall seemed distant now, like a scene from someone else's life. But the bruises on her wrists reminded her that some battles must be fought in person, not from behind computer screens or through operational directives. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Commander Vega. "New evidence recovered. Security Director Denton received payments from foreign accounts. Meeting tomorrow 08:00 hours." The pieces were falling into place faster than expected. Elena sent a one-word reply. "Proceed." Outside her window, the campus security vehicle made another pass along the perimeter road. The driver glanced up toward her office, then quickly looked away when he realized she was watching. The balance of power had shifted. Everyone knew it now. Elena closed her laptop and gathered her things. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new confrontations. But tonight, she would rest. The mission was progressing exactly as planned, even with its unexpected complications. Sometimes the most effective way to expose a broken system was to let it break you first. The world had seen her humiliation. Now it would witness her resolution. As she walked across the darkened campus toward her apartment, students passing by fell silent, watching her with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. The woman from the videos, the professor who had revealed herself to be something more. She nodded politely but didn't engage. Her cover remained intact, just transformed into something new, no longer hidden, but still not fully revealed. The cool night air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of change. Phase 2 would begin at dawn. The real mission was just beginning. Dawn broke over Westlake University with golden fingers of light, stretching across the misty campus grounds. Elena Reeves stood at her apartment window, watching the day begin with the focused attention of someone who understood that seemingly ordinary moments often contain critical details. She'd been awake since 4:30 a.m., reviewing intelligence reports and preparing for her 8 a.m. meeting with Commander Vega. The evidence against Security Director Denton was mounting by the hour. Financial transactions through shell companies, suspicious communications with foreign entities, systematic targeting of international students and faculty. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena dressed with methodical precision, charcoal suit, white blouse, sensible shoes that would allow her to move quickly if necessary. Her appearance was deliberately unremarkable, designed to blend rather than stand out. The only hint of her true capabilities was in her eyes, alert, observant, missing nothing. As she fastened her watch, her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. Operation compromised. Extraction imminent. Maintain position. Her expression didn't change as she read the message, but her mind immediately accelerated, calculating possibilities, identifying threats, formulating contingencies. If the operation had been compromised, it meant their target had been tipped off. Security Director Denton knew they were closing in. The carefully constructed trap was now in danger of failing, and worse, potentially exposing other ongoing operations. Elena sent a brief acknowledgement and slipped the phone into her pocket. The original plan was no longer viable, but she wasn't ready to abandon the mission. Too many people had been hurt by Denton's actions. Too many legitimate security threats had gone unaddressed, while he focused on harassing innocent students and faculty. There had to be another way to complete the operation. Instead of heading toward the administration building for her scheduled meeting, Elena changed direction and walked purposefully toward the student center. The massive glass building was already buzzing with activity, students grabbing breakfast, preparing for morning classes, gathering in small groups to discuss assignments. Perfect cover for what she needed to do. She found Maya Williams exactly where she expected, at a corner table surrounded by student activists, planning the day's protest against campus security abuses. Maya was a senior political science major, the unofficial leader of the growing student movement, demanding accountability and reform. Elena had been watching her for days, impressed by the young woman's organizational skills and natural leadership abilities. Elena approached the table quietly, standing at the edge of the group until Maya noticed her. The students fell silent immediately, eyes wide with recognition. The woman from the viral videos was standing before them in person. "Professor Reeves," Maya said, rising to her feet. "We were just discussing the protest schedule for today." Elena nodded. "May I speak with you privately for a moment?" The other students exchanged glances but quickly gathered their things and stepped away, giving them space while remaining within sight. Trust was still a fragile commodity on campus. "Your movement is gaining momentum," Elena said once they were alone. "The administration is concerned." Maya's chin lifted slightly. "Good. They should be. We have documented over 50 incidents of security overreach in the past year alone. What happened to you was just the one that finally got caught on video. What if I told you there's more happening than simple security overreach?" Elena asked, keeping her voice low. "What if some of these incidents were deliberately orchestrated to create a specific pattern of intimidation?" Maya's eyes narrowed. "We've suspected as much. Certain groups seem to be targeted more than others. International students, female faculty in STEM fields, researchers with government grants. You're more perceptive than I gave you credit for," Elena said. "I need your help." "My help?" Maya looked stunned. "For what?" "To finish what the video started. Security Director Denton is going to try to leave campus within the next few hours. He can't be allowed to do that before he answers for what he's done." Maya leaned forward. "Are you saying what I think you're saying? That you want us to—" "What? Stop him somehow?" Elena smiled slightly. "I'm saying that your protest might be most effective if it happened to block all campus exits around, say, 10:30 this morning, and if you happen to have media contacts ready to document everything that occurs." Understanding dawned in Maya's eyes. "This is bigger than just campus security issues, isn't it? Who are you, really?" "Someone who believes that systems only change when brave people force them to," Elena replied. "Will you help?" Maya didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. By 9:45 a.m., Elena's phone was buzzing constantly with updates. Commander Vega had arrived on campus with a federal task force, only to find that Denton had already cleared out his office and wasn't responding to calls. Campus security cameras showed him entering the administrative parking garage 20 minutes earlier with 2 large suitcases. Student protesters were mobilizing at all campus exits as planned, creating human barricades that would make a quick escape impossible. Elena moved through the chaos with calm purpose, coordinating with both Commander Vega and Maya Williams. The pieces were in place. Now they just needed Denton to make his move. At precisely 10:17 a.m., security cameras captured Denton's black SUV attempting to exit through the West Campus gate. He found his path blocked by over 100 students sitting peacefully across the roadway, many holding signs with slogans like "Security means safety for all" and "Accountability now." Camera phones recorded from every angle as his vehicle slowed, then stopped. Elena watched from a nearby building, maintaining communication with Vega's team. "He's at the West Gate," she reported, moving into position now. "Be careful," Vega cautioned. "We have reports he may be armed." Understood. Elena made her way toward the growing confrontation, staying on the periphery of the crowd. Denton had emerged from his vehicle now, his face flushed with anger as he confronted the student protesters. "This is an illegal obstruction," he shouted, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet gathering. "Move immediately or face arrest and expulsion." Maya Williams stepped forward, calm and composed. "We're exercising our right to peaceful protest, Director Denton. We have permits filed with the university administration." "I don't care what you filed," Denton snapped. "I'm campus security, and I'm ordering you to disperse now." "Actually," came a new voice from behind him, "your authority has been temporarily suspended pending investigation." Denton whirled around to find Commander Vega standing there, flanked by 2 federal agents. "What the hell are you talking about?" Vega held up an official document. "Richard Denton, you're wanted for questioning regarding multiple violations of federal law, including misuse of authority, discrimination, obstruction of justice, and potential espionage activities." The crowd murmured as phones captured every word. Denton's face drained of color, then flushed dark red. "This is absurd. You have no jurisdiction here." "Federal investigations supersede campus boundaries," Vega replied calmly. "Please come with us voluntarily." Denton's hand moved toward his jacket, and Elena tensed, ready to intervene. But before he could reach whatever he was going for, Maya stepped directly into his path, dozens of students moving with her to form a wall between Denton and his vehicle. "You can't intimidate us anymore," Maya said, her voice steady despite the danger. "We're not afraid of you." Something seemed to break in Denton at that moment. The facade of authority crumbled, revealing the desperation beneath. "You don't understand," he hissed. "This goes beyond campus politics. I was protecting national interests." "By targeting innocent students?" Elena asked, finally stepping forward into his line of sight. "By destroying research? By creating an atmosphere of fear that actually compromised campus security?" Denton's eyes widened when he saw her. "You," he spat. "I should have known. Who are you really working for?" "The people you were supposed to protect," she answered simply. "The ones you betrayed." Commander Vega moved in, federal agents at her side. "Mr. Denton, you need to come with us now." For a moment, it seemed he might resist. His eyes darted around, calculating odds, looking for escape routes. But he was surrounded by federal agents, by students with cameras, by his own failures made manifest. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As the agents led him away, the crowd parted silently, hundreds of phone cameras documenting every moment. Not a single voice jeered or taunted. The students simply watched, bearing witness to the fact that even the most entrenched power could be held accountable when enough people stood together. Elena remained on the periphery, observing rather than participating in the victory. Maya found her there as the crowd began to disperse, excitement and disbelief mingling in her expression. "That actually worked," Maya said, breathless with the realization. "We stopped him." "You stopped him," Elena corrected her. "All I did was suggest a time and place." Maya shook her head. "No. You did much more than that. You showed us it was possible to stand up to authority, when that authority is abused. Your videos started all of this." The videos were just the catalyst, Elena said. The change was already waiting to happen. It just needed a spark. As they spoke, Elena's phone buzzed with another encrypted message. Extraction team at North Campus housing. 30 minutes. She slipped the phone back into her pocket without responding. What happens now? Maya asked. The security director is gone, but the system that enabled him is still in place. Elena studied the young woman thoughtfully. In Maya, she saw the rare combination of passion and discipline, idealism tempered with strategic thinking. Someone who could continue the work of transformation long after Elena was gone. Systems change when people inside them refuse to accept the status quo, Elena said. You've started something important here. The question is whether you'll see it through, even when the cameras are gone and the excitement fades. Maya straightened her shoulders. We will. This isn't just about one security director or one incident. It's about creating a campus where everyone feels safe, where authority is used to protect, not intimidate. That's the right answer, Elena smiled. Keep asking the difficult questions, Maya. Keep holding power accountable. They parted ways as students began reorganizing for an afternoon rally. Elena walked unhurriedly toward the North Campus, where her extraction team would be waiting. Her official mission was complete. The security breach contained, the foreign intelligence network exposed, the compromised administrator neutralized. But the unofficial mission, the one that had emerged unexpectedly from her own mistreatment, felt equally significant. As she approached the extraction point, Elena's phone buzzed one final time. A message from Admiral Harrington. Mission outcomes exceeded expectations. Well done, Commander. She allowed herself a small smile as she typed her response. The next generation is ready. They just needed to see it was possible. The extraction team was exactly where they were supposed to be. Two nondescript individuals in a standard university maintenance van. Nothing to draw attention or raise suspicions. Elena approached casually, as if she were simply asking for directions. Professor Reeves? The driver nodded. Ready to depart? Elena glanced back at the campus spreading behind her. The ancient buildings and modern research facilities, the students crossing the quadrangle with renewed purpose in their steps, the security vehicles now moving with noticeable restraint along the perimeter roads. In just a few days, the entire atmosphere had changed. Authority was no longer unquestioned. Power was no longer unchecked. Almost, she said. There's one more thing I need to do. The driver frowned. Admiral Harrington was very clear. Immediate extraction. 15 minutes, Elena insisted. There's something important I need to finish. The driver exchanged looks with his partner, then reluctantly nodded. 15 minutes, not a second more. Elena made her way to her faculty office one last time. Inside, she found exactly what she expected. Everything untouched, exactly as she had left it. She sat at her desk and quickly composed a letter on university letterhead. Not a resignation, but something more valuable. A detailed set of recommendations for security reform, drawing on her years of experience in both military and academic settings. She addressed it to President Chambers with copies to student government, the faculty senate, and the Board of Trustees. The recommendations were practical, implementable, and specifically designed to prevent the abuses that had flourished under Denton's leadership. Her final official act as a professor at Westlake University. As she sealed the envelope, a soft knock came at her door. Elena looked up to find Dr. Sarah Chen standing there again, this time with determination in her expression. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Sarah asked without preamble. Elena didn't bother denying it. "My work here is done." "Is it?" Sarah stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. "The students are organizing, yes. The security director is gone. But the underlying problems, the biases, the assumptions, the institutional inertia, those will remain long after today's excitement fades. That's why the work continues," Elena said, holding up the sealed envelope, "and why it needs people like you to carry it forward." Sarah took a deep breath. "Before you go, I need to know, was any of it real? Your research, your teaching, your colleagues? Were we just cover for whatever mission brought you here?" Elena stood, gathering her few personal items from the desk. "The mission brought me here," she acknowledged. "But everything that happened after, the connections, the teaching, the community, that was real. Sometimes the most effective cover is simply being authentic in a different context. She handed the envelope to Sarah. Make sure this reaches the right people. It won't solve everything, but it's a place to start. Sarah accepted the envelope with a nod. Will we ever see you again? Probably not, Elena admitted. At least not in this capacity. But what happened here, what we started together, that will continue. They walked together to the office door. Outside, students were gathering for afternoon classes, the campus rhythms continuing despite the morning's dramatic events. Life adapting to new realities, as it always did. One last thing, Sarah said as they prepared to part ways. That morning in the lecture hall, when they zip-tied you and destroyed your equipment, you could have stopped them at any point, couldn't you? Elena paused, considering her answer carefully. Sometimes the most powerful action is choosing not to act. Sometimes you have to let the system reveal its flaws before you can truly change it. That's quite a sacrifice to make, Sarah observed. To allow yourself to be humiliated, to have your work destroyed. It wasn't destroyed, Elena smiled slightly. The real work was documenting exactly how they would respond to perceived vulnerability. Every moment was data. Every reaction was evidence. Understanding dawned in Sarah's eyes. You weren't just testing them, you were building a case. Change requires evidence, Elena said simply. Now you have it. Use it wisely. They parted with a handshake that conveyed more than words could express. Mutual respect, shared purpose, the understanding that comes from witnessing transformation together. Elena walked away without looking back, her steps measured and confident as she headed toward the extraction point. The maintenance van was waiting exactly where she had left it, engines idling. The driver looked relieved when she appeared. Cutting it close, Professor. Some goodbyes can't be rushed, she replied, climbing into the passenger seat. As the van pulled away from Westlake University, Elena watched the campus recede in the side mirror. In the quadrangle, students were gathering around Maya Williams, listening intently as she spoke. Near the administration building, Commander Vega was conferring with university officials, likely explaining the extent of the federal investigation now underway. At the West Gate, campus security officers were removing the barricades with newfound respect for the student protesters who had helped expose corruption in their ranks. The mission had begun as a straightforward counterintelligence operation, identify and neutralize a security breach that threatened national interests. But it had evolved into something more profound, a catalyst for systemic change, a demonstration of how power could be held accountable when people found the courage to stand up. Where to now? The driver asked as they cleared the campus perimeter. Elena turned away from the mirror, facing forward as the university disappeared behind them. Wherever were needed next. The van merged onto the highway, becoming just another vehicle in the flow of traffic. To anyone watching, it was completely unremarkable, just as Elena had always appeared to be just another professor until circumstances revealed her true capabilities. The most effective operators were those who could move between worlds without drawing attention, who could create change without claiming credit, who understood that true power often lay in restraint rather than force. As Westlake University faded from view, Elena allowed herself a moment of reflection. Missions came and went, each with their own challenges and rewards. But few had offered the opportunity to create such meaningful change, to set in motion ripples that would continue long after her departure. Whatever came next, she would carry this experience with her, the reminder that sometimes the greatest victories were the quiet ones, the transformations that happened not through confrontation, but through revelation. The van accelerated, carrying her toward her next assignment. Behind her, a campus forever changed continued its journey toward becoming what it had always claimed to be, a place of safety, inclusion, and genuine learning for all who entered its gates. 3 months later, the autumn chill had given way to winter's first snow across the Westlake University campus. Delicate flakes drifted lazily from a pearl-gray sky, transforming the quadrangle into a pristine white canvas unmarked by footprints in the early morning stillness. In her temporary office in the Pentagon, Elena Reeves studied the latest security briefing from her former assignment, a quiet smile playing at the corners of her mouth as she scrolled through the updates. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The transformation at Westlake had exceeded even her most optimistic projections. Following Security Director Denton's arrest and subsequent cooperation with federal authorities, the full extent of the foreign intelligence operation had been revealed, a sophisticated network that had targeted not just Westlake, but 5 other major research universities across the country. The investigation had uncovered data theft, attempted recruitment of students and faculty, and the systematic intimidation of anyone who might have discovered the operation. More importantly, the university itself had undergone profound changes. President Chambers, initially defensive about the security failures under his administration, had eventually embraced the opportunity for institutional renewal. Elena's detailed recommendations had been implemented with surprising thoroughness. New security protocols emphasizing protection rather than intimidation, accountability measures including body cameras and civilian oversight, mandatory diversity training focused on recognizing and eliminating bias. Maya Williams had been appointed to a newly created student position on the university's Security Oversight Committee, bringing her passionate advocacy into the formal decision-making process. Dr. Sarah Chen now headed the Faculty Committee on Institutional Ethics, using her platform to ensure that academic freedom and personal dignity remained central values in campus governance. Even Officers Mercer and Wilson had found paths to redemption. After initial administrative leave and remedial training, both had returned to duty under the new protocols, humbled by their very public failure, and committed to embodying a different approach to authority. Elena closed the file and turned her attention to the new assignment on her desk. Another university, another potential security compromise, another opportunity to protect vital research while also transforming institutional culture. The methods would be different this time. Every mission required its own approach, but the underlying principles remained the same. Observe carefully, identify systemic weaknesses, and create circumstances where those weaknesses would reveal themselves so clearly that even the most resistant stakeholders could no longer deny the need for change. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Admiral Harrington, probably with updates on the new assignment parameters. Elena answered with professional crispness. Commander Reeves. Elena, the Admiral's voice held an unusual warmth. Before you dive into the Carnegie Tech situation, there's something you should see. Sending it to your secure email now. Her computer chimed with the incoming message. Elena opened it to find a video link from Westlake University's student newspaper. 100 Days of Change, How One Incident Transformed Campus Security Culture. They don't mention you by name, Harrington continued. Your cover remains intact. But I thought you might appreciate seeing the impact. Elena clicked the link. The video opened with footage she recognized. The viral clips of her detainment, the security officers destroying her equipment, the moment when the response team had recognized her authority and saluted. But then it shifted to interviews with students and faculty describing the changes that had followed. International students spoke of feeling genuinely safe on campus for the first time. Faculty members detailed how academic freedom had flourished once the atmosphere of intimidation had been removed. Security officers themselves discussed how the new protocols had actually improved their ability to address real threats, rather than wasting resources on baseless harassment. Maya Williams appeared on screen, poised and articulate as she addressed the camera. What happened that morning in Manning Hall was a catalyst, but the real transformation has come from hundreds of people choosing every day to build something better. One person showed us it was possible to stand up to abused authority. But all of us together are creating a new standard for what security really means. Elena watched the entire video without speaking. When it ended, she sat in silence for a moment before responding to the Admiral, who had waited patiently on the line. "Thank you for sharing that," she said finally, her voice steady despite the unexpected emotion tightening her throat. "You did good work there, Elena," Harrington said. "The kind that continues long after you've moved on. That's rare in our line of work." "The work continues," she replied, her focus already shifting to the new assignment. Carnegie Tech looks like a similar pattern, but with some concerning variations. They discussed the operational details for another 20 minutes before ending the call. Elena gathered the files she would need for her afternoon briefing, her mind already mapping potential approaches for the new mission. But as she prepared to leave her office, Her eyes fell on a small photo frame on her desk, the only personal item in the otherwise Spartan space. The photograph showed Elena, standing on a boat with her niece and sister, all three smiling as they held fishing rods against a backdrop of sparkling water. It had been taken during a rare weekend leave between the Westlake assignment and her current posting. Those precious hours of normalcy had grounded her, reminded her why the work mattered. Her niece had asked her a question that day, innocent and profound in the way that children's questions often were. "Aunt Elena, why do you like stopping bad guys?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Elena hadn't answered immediately. She had looked out at the water, the light, the peaceful scene they were privileged to enjoy, and considered how to explain complex realities to an 8-year-old mind. "I don't focus on stopping bad guys," she had said finally. "I focus on helping good people do better. Sometimes that means showing them where things are broken so they can fix them." Her niece had nodded, satisfied with the answer even if she didn't fully understand its implications. They had stayed out on the water until sunset, catching and releasing small fish, talking about school and friends and normal everyday concerns that had nothing to do with national security or institutional transformation. Now, as Elena prepared to immerse herself in another complex mission, she carried that memory with her, the reminder that her work wasn't ultimately about intelligence gathering or counter-espionage or even security protocols. It was about creating spaces where people could live ordinary lives without fear, where systems served those they were designed to protect rather than becoming instruments of intimidation or exclusion. She tucked the Carnegie Tech files into her briefcase and headed for the briefing room, her steps measured and purposeful. In the Pentagon's labyrinthine corridors, junior officers nodded respectfully as she passed. Her reputation had grown since the Westlake operation, not because she had claimed credit or sought recognition, but because results spoke for themselves. Systems changed, vulnerabilities addressed, missions accomplished with minimal collateral damage and maximum lasting impact. The briefing room was already filled when she arrived. Intelligence analysts, operational specialists, cultural experts, all assembled to plan an intervention that would protect vital research while strengthening rather than undermining the academic environment that produced it. Elena took her place at the head of the table, noting the expectant faces turned toward her. "Carnegie Tech presents unique challenges," she began without preamble. "Their quantum computing research has attracted sophisticated attention from multiple foreign actors, but the institutional culture is different from Westlake, less hierarchical, more decentralized, with security distributed across several semi-autonomous units rather than centralized under a single authority." She outlined the known infiltration points, the patterns of compromised access, the indications of data exfiltration that had triggered federal attention. The team listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions or offering specialized insights. This was how operations should work: collaborative, thoughtful, focused on systemic solutions rather than dramatic interventions. Standard protocols would suggest a direct extraction of the compromised assets, offered Colonel Jenkins, a veteran intelligence officer with decades of experience. Clean sweep, minimal exposure. Elena acknowledged his point with a respectful nod. That would address the immediate threat, she agreed. But it would leave the underlying vulnerabilities intact. The next attempt would simply target different access points, different individuals. "You're suggesting a more comprehensive approach," said Dr. Levine, the cultural specialist. "It wasn't a question. I'm suggesting we consider not just what we remove, but what we leave behind," Elena clarified. "Each institution has unique characteristics that can be leveraged to create lasting security improvements rather than temporary patches." The discussion continued for hours, evolving from a standard operational briefing into a collaborative design session. By the time they adjourned late that evening, the Carnegie Tech intervention had taken shape, a nuanced, multi-phase approach that would identify and neutralize the immediate threats while simultaneously strengthening the university's internal security culture. As the team gathered their materials and prepared to depart, Colonel Jenkins lingered behind, waiting until the others had left before approaching Elena. "The Westlake approach was unorthodox," he said without preamble. "Allowing yourself to be detained, equipment destroyed, considerable personal risk for uncertain outcomes." Elena met his gaze steadily. Every environment requires its own methods. Westlake needed a catalyst for cultural change. Carnegie Tech will require something different. And the personal cost? He pressed. Does that factor into your operational planning? She considered her answer carefully. The most effective operations are those where personal considerations don't compromise mission objectives. Sometimes that means accepting temporary discomfort for lasting impact. Jenkins studied her with the assessing gaze of someone who had seen many promising officers come and go. Just be careful that the discomfort remains temporary, Commander. I've seen too many good operatives burn themselves up for the mission. Noted, Elena replied, neither accepting nor dismissing his concern. Will you be joining the deployment team? Wouldn't miss it, he said with a hint of a smile. The Reeves method is becoming something of a legend in certain circles. I want to see it in action. After he departed, Elena remained in the briefing room, reviewing her notes and considering the conversation. Jenkins wasn't wrong about the personal costs. The zip tie marks had finally faded from her wrists, but other missions had left less visible scars. Relationships sacrificed to operational secrecy. Normal life perpetually deferred for the next critical assignment. The constant vigilance that became so habitual she sometimes forgot how to relax even in genuinely safe spaces. Yet the work itself provided a different kind of fulfillment. Not just the satisfaction of completed missions, but the deeper knowledge that systems were changing, becoming more just, more effective, more aligned with their stated purposes. Each operation, when executed properly, left behind not just neutralized threats, but strengthened communities. Elena gathered her materials and switched off the briefing room lights. Tomorrow would bring the initial preparations for Carnegie Tech, identity establishment, background implantation, the careful construction of a cover that would allow her to move freely within the university environment. But tonight, she would allow herself a few hours of genuine rest. The mission required it. Effectiveness demanded balance, even for those who had made service their life's work. As she drove home through Washington's quiet streets, snowflakes began to fall, delicate and precise in their descent, each unique, each part of a greater pattern. Elena watched them gather on her windshield before being swept away by wipers. Constant renewal, constant change, constant adaptation to circumstances. Nature's lesson in resilience. Her apartment was small but comfortable, more of a way station than a true home given how little time she spent there. Still, she had made efforts to create a space that nourished rather than merely contained her, books carefully chosen for both information and inspiration, art that reminded her of places she had protected, photographs of the few people who knew her true work and loved her anyway. Elena moved through her evening routine with the same quiet efficiency that characterized her professional life. Simple meal prepared and eaten, brief call to her sister, review of the next day's schedule, preparations laid out for morning. But as she prepared for sleep, her mind returned to the Westlake video, to Maya Williams, words about catalysts and transformation. One person showed us it was possible to stand up to abused authority, but all of us together are creating a new standard for what security really means. That was the true measure of operational success. Not just achieving immediate objectives, but creating the conditions for positive change to continue long after direct involvement ended. Westlake had transformed not because Elena had forced change upon it, but because she had revealed possibilities that others then embraced and expanded. She had been the catalyst, but the reaction continued through the choices and commitments of hundreds of individuals who had never known her real name or purpose. In the morning, she would begin building another catalyst, designed for Carnegie Tech's unique environment and challenges. The approach would be different, the methods tailored to specific circumstances, but the underlying principle remained constant. True security came not from force or fear, but from systems that respected the dignity and agency of those they protected. As snow continued to fall outside her window, Elena allowed herself to imagine the countless transformations happening across the country in places she had never visited, initiated by people she would never meet. Every act of courage, every challenge to abused authority, every refusal to accept intimidation as normal, each one a catalyst for change that could spread far beyond its origin point. Her work was just one thread in that vast tapestry, important but not singular, significant but not irreplaceable. The most effective operators understood that lasting change came not from individual heroics, but from creating the conditions where ordinary courage could flourish, where systems could evolve toward greater justice and effectiveness. Elena closed her eyes, allowing her mind to settle into the calm that preceded true rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complexities, new opportunities to apply her unique skills toward meaningful outcomes. But tonight, she could take satisfaction in knowing that somewhere on a snow-covered campus, people she had briefly known were continuing the work she had helped begin. Creating a community where authority served rather than dominated, where security meant genuine safety for all rather than comfort for some at the expense of others. In her years of service, Elena had learned that transformation rarely came from dramatic confrontations or grand gestures. More often, it grew from quiet moments of dignified resistance, from refusing to accept injustice even when fighting it carried personal cost, from standing firm in one's principles even when standing alone. Those moments created ripples that gradually became waves, changes that slowly became permanent, improvements that eventually became standard. The most powerful legacy wasn't in buildings named or medals awarded, or even missions successfully completed. It was in the invisible shifts in what people believed possible, in the quiet courage of those who continued working for change long after the catalysts had moved on, in the gradual evolution of systems toward greater justice and genuine security. As sleep began to claim her consciousness, Elena held that knowledge close, the reassurance that her work mattered not because she personally accomplished great things, but because she helped create spaces where others could accomplish even greater things together. In that truth lay both purpose and peace, the twin foundations upon which a life of service could be built and sustained. The snow continued to fall, covering the city in a blanket of pristine white that would be transformed by morning into paths and patterns, created by countless individuals going about their daily lives, each making their own way, each contributing to the greater whole, each part of a community that could either oppress or liberate depending on the choices made by those with power and those willing to hold power accountable. Elena's last conscious thought before drifting into sleep was not of missions or threats or operational parameters, but of Maya Williams standing tall before a gathering of fellow students, leading them toward a vision of security built on respect rather than fear. That image of ordinary courage continuing long after the catalyst had departed was the true measure of success, the lasting legacy that made all the personal sacrifices worthwhile. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.